I know you're wanting to listen to this episode of the Comics Alternative, but before we get started, let me just remind you guys that it's the gift-giving season. Now, that may be obvious, but one of the things that's not so obvious is that you can get all of your stuff and help out the podcast by going to comicsalternative.com/Amazon. Click through on our Amazon banner that you find on that page, and whatever you get during that visit to Amazon, the Comics Alternative will get a few cents kickback. So, whether it be Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa, or Festivus, get your gifts through our Amazon Associate link. It's a smart way to get your books, and you'll be helping out the podcast. And isn't that what the holiday season is all about? Helping our podcast. This is the Comics Alternative on location for our December visit to Valhalla Games and Comics in Plano, Texas. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Comics Alternative on location. We're at Valhalla Games and Comics in Plano, Texas. They are located at 3100 Independence Parkway in Plano, Texas. That's on the corner of Independence and Parker. If you're in the area, the DFW area, especially in Plano, then swing on by. It's a great shop. Great people work here. They'll treat you right. And speaking of the shop and its employees, as well as customers, we have a sampling here at this month's On Location show. Stephanie, who works at the shop, is here to represent, I guess, the behind-the-counter perspective. How you doing?
Pretty good.
And then we have a couple of customers. Matt, who is a staple on these On Location shows. How you doing, sir?
Doing well. How about yourself?
I am doing fine. Thank you. And then we have someone who is brand new to the Comics Alternative, these On Location shows, and it's Josh, correct?
Yes.
And Josh, I would like for you to share how you found out about it, because I thought it was really interesting what you told me before we cut on the mics. How did you find out about our On Location recordings?
I saw the name of the store in a Facebook, I guess it was an ad or something, and I saw that, it's two guys with PhDs going over comics, and I didn't know it was a podcast until I stepped in. So, pleasant surprise. But are you talking about the conversation that we had before?
Yeah, about how, you found out about this, which I found interesting, and it's also a success story for what Sabrina, the store manager, does in putting up an events page on Facebook, because that's, I guess, how you found this. And so that's great. We do this once a month, and I hope that you come in subsequent months on the Wednesdays that we're here and, talk about stuff.
Yeah. And how I found out about comics is actually quite interesting and very unique. I go to a community college called Richland Community College, and they had this beta class. It was just a flyer advertising that you could get an English 2 credit for reading comics, manga, and graphic novels. And it was just a class, and I decided to take it. And then over the summer, I decided to start getting into comics, reading up on them, the history about it. And when I got in the class, I learned about comics, read about comics, and did research papers over comics. So it's a very interesting introduction to comics in general.
Wow, so another success story of how one could get introduced to comic-related events or just comics in general through the classroom. And it makes me feel good to hear that, because I'm a professor and I teach. So kudos to the professor of that Richland College class. And who was that professor?
Patrick Murphy.
Okay, Patrick Murphy, you did a good job. You got your students interested in the medium. So there you go. And you'll have to tell him to listen to the podcast now.
I will.
Okay. Well, Josh, one of the things we do every month is, well, first and foremost, we just talk about whatever's on our mind in terms of comics and comics culture. Some months we have a particular topic. Some months it's open, anything goes. This month it is December, and we're approaching the end of 2016, so we thought it would be fun to talk about what some of us feel are our favorite comics of the past 12 months. Now, I have some favorites, but I'm not going to share them tonight because I saved them for our final episode of the year, and we're going to be recording that in about a week and a half. And I definitely don't want to share it now because I don't share it with my co-host, Andy. Both of us pick what each of us considers the best 10 of the year, our favorite 10, in no particular order, and we don't tell each other until we get to record the episode. And so it's kind of a surprise sometimes what each of us picks or even doesn't pick. So I will not contribute in that way, but I want to hear from you guys what you consider your favorite comics of 2016.
Oh. Do you want to go first? Yeah, you go first. I'm sorry.
Okay. So, as far I was looking actually through my box to see which ones I really liked. And so one that continues to be really good is DC Comics Bombshells, which is a very different take on superheroes. So if someone's wanting something really fresh, it is really good. So basically it's based off the DC Bombshells statue line, which is like, it started out as just like vintage pin-up inspired statues of a bunch of DC's female characters. Now they've added like dude characters to the line too. And so we have so basically it's like instead of all the dude heroes who are away fighting their own adventures, I'm guessing it's all the female heroes fighting during World War II. And it's like reimaginings of a lot of these characters. So you have like Mari McCabe, who was just introduced, is like a black Olympian during World War II, and she went and won, and then she goes to steal stuff from the Third Reich, and she steals Hitler's dog too. And then you have Miss Marvel, or not Mary Marvel, who is a Jewish character in this, and so is Zatanna, and so it's really nice, like reimagining and then putting them in the situation without like diminishing the horrors of the war too.
Now this has been going on Bombshells for a couple of years, right?
I think almost 2 years. It's on issue 20.
Okay, and so this is one of your favorites of 2016.
Yes, because it's just the first arc wrapped up, and like the second arc has continued to be like just really, really good. And they've also introduced like new characters. They kind of did some really fun things, like they would put in tie-ins to the statue line that they don't have to do. So they like justified the Halloween Barbara Gordon statue where she's a vampire, and they put that in the comic. Without it being like weird. It like makes sense, and it just continues to be quality. I love it.
Does Marguerite Bennett still write for that?
She does, actually. Okay. And also it has what's her name? The artwork is the same person too that it's been the entire time. So there's just been a lot of love on it. But Savage is her last name. I can't remember her first name. But it's been good.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. And then another thing that's been really good still is Monstrous, which wrapped up the first arc and is back again. Like, if you saw the first one or maybe checked out the first one, the art is still the same quality that you get from the first issue, which is just super intricate, super beautiful, and like I'm really excited to see where it goes, and I'm glad it's finally back.
It's still really thick volumes, correct?
Well, no, the first one was like a kind of triple-y issue.
Oh yeah, it was a chunky one.
Yeah, but like they're not like tiny. They come out regularly. They went on break, but they're back. Which I love that, and that's Marjorie Liu. And then as far as other comics, Legend of Wonder Woman was also really good. It was a more classic take on Wonder Woman, like her origin story, but with like a modern update by Renee DeLiz, and Ray Dillon does the art, and it's just really beautiful. It has like Etta Candy, and it like explains like her backstory, which is just really great for someone looking to get into Wonder Woman. And it's collected in a hardcover trade just in time for the holidays. And then the regular Wonder Woman comic too by
Is that Rucka?
Rucka, yes, Greg Rucka. So Greg Rucka is back on writing Wonder Woman, and so basically it's bi-monthly, which was kind of weird, but they kind of utilize it more than the other comics that are coming out bi-monthly, in that one is taking place in modern day, and then the other is like another origin story sort of thing, because the theme of it is like reestablishing who Wonder Woman is, especially after the New 52 took her to some weird places that a lot of people didn't particularly enjoy. So it's like establishing what is going to be true going forward while exploring like all these really great themes. Like it's redefining who Cheetah is. It does a really great origin story for Steve Trevor and Wonder Woman. It's been really good.
You know, on this topic of the bi-monthly Wonder Woman, you know, one of the things I've asked you guys, I remember asking this last month, but it's also come up one or two other times, is the fact that many people who talk with us at these on-location shows, who I usually think of in terms of Marvel folk, have become more enamored of DC because of Rebirth. And one of the things that is defining Rebirth, or at least DC since Rebirth, is the number of bi-monthly comics that they're putting out. And so, you know, they're taking maybe a cue from Marvel's playbook, because they've been doing this for a while. And I'm wondering if you guys consider the bi-monthly publishing strategy to be effective. Is it something that you like?
I do like that it is cheaper, because it is like a $2.99 comic instead of being like $4.99 or $3.99. If it was more expensive and still bi-monthly, it might be hurting more. But as far as like some of the other ones, it's kind of easy to get behind. But I think Wonder Woman utilizes it really well, because if you are super interested in maybe like, you know, one part of the story, you can maybe be like, all right, I'm going to pick it up at the end of the month, and you're not feeling like, oh, I don't know, you're getting like two separate things. They're utilizing the format very well.
Okay. Well, Matt, what is one or maybe even two of your favorite of 2016?
If you've heard me on the podcast before, and I'm sure you have, I've always raved about Jeff Lemire's Black Hammer. Fantastic comic about, I don't want to say disgruntled superheroes, but a very mismatch of a hodgepodge, I guess you could say, of superheroes that they're very strange, very wacky, stuck in a town, and it's going through the backstories right now, so they haven't explained why exactly they're stuck. I think probably some battle they haven't explained yet in the issues. I've only read up to issue 4 right now, so I'm sure. I think it's up to issue 5.
So 5 is out?
Yeah, 5. So I'm not extremely caught up. So.
And I think, if I remember correctly, that the first trade of Black Hammer was solicited last month.
It was, yes.
And I remember, I like that title as well. But I don't think I ordered or pre-ordered the trade, because, you know, it may be stupid, but I'm waiting to see if they're going to have deluxe editions.
Oh, yeah. Oh, most likely, yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, with Image, I think you could more or less assume that something like that they would. But this is a Dark Horse book.
Yeah.
And they may or they may not. I don't know.
And because it was solicited in 2015, and the artist for the comic book was ill for some time, and it actually didn't come out until I think the summer of 2016.
Right.
So that's why I'm giving it my 2016 overall, best comic. I've also raved at Cecil Castellucci, the Changing Girl.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's one of your favorites of the year?
Yes. And then also I want to give a shout out to Tyler Crook's Harrow County.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Enjoy the Cullen Bunn's writing.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting, very bloody, and of course when you think of monsters and witches and stuff like that, but it's an interesting take on just being isolated, down there and surrounded by monsters and things that aren't quite monsters, and getting to understand them from a girl who doesn't quite want to be what she is. So
Well, that's another Dark Horse title.
it is.
Yeah.
They're getting out the good horror stuff this year.
Yeah.
I think that's the 3 that I most enjoyed this year. So I really don't have very much of anything else to mention.
Yeah. Okay, so far you guys are mentioning series. Or, Stephanie, you did mention the Wonder Woman collection, but it originally appeared as a series. Josh, is there a title, either a series or even just, a standalone book, if you want to call it original graphic novel, or even archival collection, that came out this year that you're particularly enamored of?
Actually, yes. It's an Image comic called Saga, and I found the first couple copies at a library, and then I went through them in one night, and I was like, wow, I gotta keep up with this stuff. And I've never read an Image comic before, but they're amazing.
Yeah.
And it's the storyline that just ceases to amaze me, because I never envisioned comics to be, hardcore, deep storyline, all these different characters being able to come in and do different things, and a whole different world that, you can approach and, just be in, almost. I thought that was really just in Marvel and DC, but I never knew that something named Image came out. I'm also relatively new. I pretty much started this year. And another Image comic that I read and that finished was Tokyo Ghost. And it was pretty cool. It had a lot of action. It had that kind of road royal feel to it.
Yeah, I read the first issue of Tokyo Ghost. We reviewed it on the podcast. I guess that was, early this year?
I think it was around summerish, yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
Or maybe
spring or summer, sometime around that.
Maybe. For some reason, it seems longer ago than that. But I remember reading that first issue. I didn't read the subsequent issues, thinking, okay, I'll just wait until the trade comes out.
Right.
And then I just never got around. I think the trade, is it out now? I know it's been solicited.
Yes. I believe it
the trade
ended just a couple of months ago, maybe October. That's when the whole thing came out, and you were able to get it in the book, in like the books,
okay.
The volumes.
So yeah, I still haven't read that yet, but I really did like it, and it was Verminder's the writer on that, right?
Yes, Rick Remender.
And then oh God, the artist.
He did Hawkeye.
Either.
Who did also Joe the Barbarian?
David
Sean-
Hawkeye?
Yes, Volume 4.
Oh, okay, never mind. Because I know Aja was the artist at first.
Yeah, no. This is the. I'm blanking on his name now that I'm trying to think of it. Sean Murphy? No. He did the art on Joe the Barbarian. He also did the art on Wake.
Even more damage.
Oh, she's got to
And Stephanie has gone to look it up.
It's a good thing about doing the podcast at a comic book shop. You can just look on the shelf for what you need.
It's Sean Murphy.
Oh, I was right.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yay, there you go.
Thank
Nice.
you.
Yeah. So that's definitely a 2016 title. Now it's interesting, Josh, that you mentioned Saga, because Saga, I mean, it's good that it's still around and going strong. That one started in 2012.
Yes.
Yeah,
But it's still coming out now.
It's still coming out, and it's one that for a while, every year at the review at award shows like the Eisners, it would always seem to win something. I don't think it won
Right.
anything this year, although Brian K. Vaughan did win, I believe, for Paper Girl. I can't remember which
Yeah.
award, Paper Girls. But he won one for that, just not Saga this year. But yeah, that's really good title.
That's cool. And then I have one more. I believe it's Spider-Gwen. Did she start up this year? Did she start
last
up
year, I
just
think?
a little bit?
Well, it's kind of confusing because they launched her book and then they did the whole Marvel. Was it Now or Marvel? Whatever.
Yeah, Marvel Now.
One of those. So they did one of their like soft renumber one things, and then
Don't they do that about every other month, though?
Yeah, and then what was that bad event that happened in between that started it?
Oh, the Spider-Verse?
Spider-Woman?
No. The one that was all Marvel wide, like the one that Battle Worlds. Okay, so there was an event where basically Doctor
Time runs
Doom
out.
used like the time cube. And so, basically the Cosmic Cube.
The Secret Wars, right?
Yeah, Secret Wars. So basically, they had Secret Wars, and then they did number ones for everything. And there was only 5 issues of the first series, and then they went into the second. So I think the second one was this year, but the first one might have been the year before. I don't know.
Yeah, Volume 0 was first, and then Volume 1.
They had to do that for a bunch of stuff because they launched Spider-Gwen, Silk, and Squirrel Girl all around the same time, and they had to do.
The Howard the Duck too. They did the same thing for all those.
It was weird.
Yep, just relaunching the series with however they want to. But there is an individual book that I forgot to mention when you were saying that earlier, which was How to Talk to Girls at Parties by Neil Gaiman.
I've heard of that one.
Yeah,
It's
really good. Have you talked about it on the podcast yet?
No, that was one that we had considered reviewing, but we never got around to it.
Okay. Consider it even more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, it's interesting. I mean, we're coming up on the last couple of weeks of December, and I feel like there's so many books that have come out over the past year that I haven't had time to read. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be leaving for North Carolina in a few days and to see my father over the holidays. I'm going to take with me a lot of books that I need to read, but I don't know if I'll have time to read even a fraction of them.
That's all right.
So,
I mean, sometime next year or years in the future.
What happens, and this happens every damn year, in that, let's say around December, I may find some time to read something that came out the previous year at some point.
Right.
And I think, oh my God, this is incredible. But I can't really, go back and say it's one of my favorites of 2016, even though it may end up being, because I hadn't read it by the time we recorded our best of 2016. And that happens with Andy as well. He mentions that.
Kind of off-the-wall sort of recommendation. It does feature comics, although I think it has some, short written stuff in it, too, is the Chainmail Bikini Anthology that came out, which I really enjoyed because we had it and I was just going to look it up, but I really it's all very relatable. And it has a wide range of interests from gaming. So it has tabletop gaming, LARPing, video games, and just basically all these experiences of women in those things. And it's just presented in a really nice way. And you can actually, I went to the website, you can get the book for $20, but you can get the PDF for $10. So if you want to check it out, it's a really inexpensive pickup.
Right. And in fact, we reviewed that book on the Comics Alternative. We did back in the spring a publisher spotlight on alternative comics and others within its collective. And that was one of the books that we reviewed. And I thought that was a great collection. I mean, not only in terms of the topic, which I think was appropriate, but just the art and the story variety. Yeah. I was specifically interested in the fact that it is about and by female gamers.
Yeah,
and that I remember when we reviewed that, I specifically, because that was on my mind quite a bit, I specifically mentioned that to my students, the vast majority of whom are in game design or game studies in some way at UTD, and a lot of them are women. So I said, this is something that you may want to check out at some point because you may find kindred souls.
Yeah, and there was another one, not to name names, that came out, but I just didn't think it was as well put together as that one was. So I just really liked Chainmail Bikini and the whole way that they presented it and put it together and what was in it.
And the editor on that, Hazlitt, I met her at SPX back in September. I can't remember. But I think she did a really good job. And she actually goes around and speaks at events or schools about this matter, women in gaming. And, I would like to get her to UT Dallas, but I don't know if we have the funds for something like that right now.
So is Skype.
Oh, we also have I also have another one that's from another not mainstream publisher, I guess. It's Fresh Romance, which if you don't buy it on Comixology or online, I guess the way that people bought it, a lot of it was from either their Kickstarter or the trade that came out. So people might not realize that is an ongoing comic that has individual issues online, and it has.
And that came out through Oni, didn't it?
It came out through Rosie Press, actually.
But I thought I saw it solicited under Oni several months ago.
I think so. I thought I saw something in there too. Yeah. Although maybe it was just sharing the same page.
Yeah.
No, it was in the Oni section.
But the publisher is Rosie Press, for anyone who wants to look it up. And it has Marguerite Bennett was really great in there, and then the first it has 3 or 4 different stories in it, and they're all pretty good, and I really enjoyed that one too. But the Beauty and the Beast retelling was fantastic. The art was really great, and then they also had one that was starts out as a kind of Archie with the Veronica and Betty situation, but then there's a twist in there, and then the second half of the story plays out completely different, and it's wonderful. It's a really good collection too.
Yeah, I remember when that was solicited, because it's not often that we see romance comics anymore. And so I thought that really stood out. And I didn't know about the digital comic until I saw that solicited. Then I did a little research and thought, okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and they also had a very successful Kickstarter. So you could get a exclusive cover from getting that, and that's the one I had.
Yay.
So yeah, they've been doing well.
Good.
There was interest in romance comics, which is, I don't know, people take note.
Who knows? That could be a genre that's flying under the radar, and before you know it, it just kind of pops up and takes over.
Yeah.
Well, I saw, I heard and I saw what you guys were discussing, preview sections, the Ojoy Sex Toy Volume 2 that was going to come out. I didn't know really anything about that. I saw the Kickstarter, and I don't know if it just intimidated me or if because getting straight into Volume 2 from Volume 1 is kind of, I'd rather start from the beginning. But what were your thoughts about something like that? I don't know if it's romance, but it certainly seemed interesting.
No, it wouldn't be romance. But that's part of, and I can't remember the name of the imprint. It starts with an L. That Oni began earlier this year. Okay. That is devoted to issues of sexuality. And so that was one of the first titles, Old Joy Sex Toy, bringing that to print. That is a part of this new imprint. And again, whose name escapes me. Not Limerick, but it's something like that. And of course, as soon as I cut off the mic, I'll remember.
Yeah,
the name.
that's fine.
But yeah, that's part of that.
Okay, I didn't know if it was romance or not, or if it was something else.
Well, I guess it depends on your definition of romance.
Yeah, No, there's a couple of web comics, I guess you could say, that I got into this year. When you guys were talking about Human Star, I got really interested in that and started reading from the beginning, and I'm really enjoying it. They're just starting, I guess, chapter 6 or volume 6 right now, so check that out if you guys want to.
Yeah, it's a really good webcomic.
And I'm pretty sure you guys haven't covered it before, but Crossed Wires. It's basically about an amateur hacker. The hackers in the world use VR, kind of like a Matrix kind of scenario where they use their avatars to hack into banks and stuff like that in order to get back at the system. And this amateur hacker falls into an elite group and silliness ensues. So I highly recommend that. Let's see what else I got in here. Oh, Not Drunk Enough, which is
that another webcomic?
Yes, it's a horror comic where a basic, humor horror, I guess you could say. A drunkard repairman gets stuck in a building with 3 other people. Well, one of them isn't exactly a people, and they're trying to figure out what's going on and try not to get killed. And there's a lot of hilarity involved, and I kind of like that, gory horror mixed with the light humor. Trying to balance it out so it's not too much for people to stomach. And another one called Sakana, which is a story about 2 fish sellers.
Fish sellers?
Well, they're the clerks over at the fish market over at Sakana, I think, someplace over in Japan. And it's the telling of a gentleman who's pining over a clerk fish seller that's across the way, and he's too nervous about to talk to her because of certain things that's happened in the past. So it's very funny, and the artwork is very interesting. Does anybody else have any webcomics or anything like that, digital wise? No?
Well, Agents of the Realm just had their successful Kickstarter a bit ago, which was really good. And then, so that I believe you can start getting soon, or it might still just be through Kickstarter, but I recommend it. It's this one, the author's take on the whole magical girl genre, but it's I don't know, it's just very nice.
Like
kind
the
of like
shoujo genre?
But she doesn't do it. It's these people from around the world at this one college, and just kind of dealing with some of the whole alternate, there's this whole other dimension, and it kind of bleeds into theirs, and I feel like it's gonna go to some interesting places, but I really enjoyed it. And then I believe, what was the one that Sabrina recommended a while ago?
Oh, the Viking one?
Yeah.
I can't remember for the life of me.
But yeah,
I know it's coming out on individual issues sometime next year, though.
Yeah, because Heavy Metal picked it up.
Yes.
And so that also had a successful Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can start getting remastered versions, because the first one, like Sabrina said, came out really fuzzy. With the wording, but it's been fixed, and you can also now get Volume 1 and
Yes.
through your comic book stores. I will look that name up.
I was looking as you guys were talking to see if last year either Andy or I had listed a webcomic as one of our favorites, or even an honorable mention. And the only one that comes up, and I remember this now, is I mentioned from my honorable mention list, so it didn't make the top 10.
Sure.
But Corey Muller's Existential Comics, which takes not just existential philosophy, but just philosophy in general, and makes it funny.
Right.
And so sometimes you'll have as characters some of the major philosophers, or you'll have individuals in the comic that spout or have something to do with different philosophies. So it's a really fun comic, but I think that's the only webcomic that we included last year in our either the top 10 or the honorable mention.
Oh, and I found the name for the book. It's called Heathen.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and so Heavy Metal's going to start printing that, and I believe they're going to be doing individual issues first.
Yes.
But you can also get it in trade from her website, and her name is Natasha Altersey, I believe is how you pronounce it. I believe she's from Oklahoma, if I remember correctly.
And that's that title that a few months ago Sabrina
Yes.
And
brought
that's one
onto the
that
show.
she lent me, and she said that she read it, and she was just going to read a couple pages and put it down. And I was like, well, it's bedtime, but I'm going to look through this book that Sabrina gave me. I also read it and couldn't put it down until it was super late. So it's really good, and I'm very happy that it's found success and everything.
No, Sabrina showed me some of the artwork for the book, and I'm definitely going to get the individual issues and the trade when it comes out. So, or I guess I'll order the trade.
Yeah, I backed the Kickstarter. I'm really happy that
Right.
it did well.
One honorable mention, I guess you could say, for me is Abby Howard's The Last Halloween. I think it's up to like 300 individual pages, right, or 600 individual pages right now. It's very long, at least the first volume. So if you need something, a little bit of horror, a little bit of very much comedy, then I recommend to check that out. And I remember
that's one that we discussed back in October. Yeah.
Yeah, you said that you were you liked it, but you were kind of confused about certain parts of it.
I can't remember our review of that.
I remember it being very favorable. So.
Oh yeah, we don't discuss things we don't like.
Well, of course,
it's a matter of, I guess, a degree of enthusiasm.
Right.
And I mean, I like that. I can't. Now that you're mentioning that we were a little confused about things, I'm vaguely remembering that feeling, but I can't remember what confused us.
I think you were confused about the parts about the father figure and the vampire, and they were kind of talking about their like little existential crisis about their spouses being dead and them trying to contact them and getting over it, and then I guess bonding over it and stuff like that. Like it was a little long-winded, maybe, or
and again, I'm trying to remember the experience because I haven't read it since then. This was back in October. Wondering why that part was included in the storyline, because it just right now doesn't seem to be, if I remember correctly, woven as tightly into the main storyline as it could be. So in other words, it seems more like a narrative tributary, something to the side that doesn't really have much to do with the main storyline.
Right.
But
it might be one of those things that it might come up with significance later on with other people, but I'm not sure.
And it could, and that's one of the things about webcomics is, there's some webcomic creators who have everything planned out, and even though something or some character may not seem to make sense early on, later the plans are for that particular event or character to become more tightly a part of the main storyline.
Right.
So it all comes together. And then there, on the other hand, there are other creators that just create as they go along, and then the story takes form in a way that maybe wasn't predetermined or that deviates wildly from the original intention. So, I mean, who knows where this will go? But I did like that comic. I thought that was a nice one.
I enjoyed it very much too.
Now, Josh, do you read many webcomics? You were talking about being a new convert to comics.
I actually I had an idea that webcomics existed, but I just don't know where to go to find them really. Although in the class that I took, we were required to I guess read a comic or manga or graphic novel out of class and then do some type of presentation over it. So I saw a lot of presentations over manga and comics, but I did see a couple over a webcomic called You Plus Me, actually You Me, Plus Dream. And
what's it called again?
Well, let me pull it up. It is You Plus Me Dream.
You Plus Me Dream?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And well, I don't know what it's really about yet, but the guy who reviewed it said it was amazing, and everyone should go read this. But I don't have too much of a clue about webcomics right now.
Well, that's the good thing about webcomics is that you got to continue reading, really get invested in order to bring out the story. Because most webcomics they can go on for years and years and years. While main issues like we have on the shelves will be over in 5. So. Keep with it. You may find that you really enjoy it.
Yeah. And there's also like just various places they're posted. Some people like do it on Tumblr. I think that's like a bunch of different. There's a bunch of different ones on there. Then there's also stuff where they may have their own website, or they may do it on there's this new website. Someone had like a Magic the Gathering fan comic that they were doing that was super
wow.
good. I think their name is like, or their username is like Ishaton or something, and it's super good. And it's just basically taking the world but using the elements of it to tell this completely new, unique story. And that's on some other website. And
the thing about
just
webcomics,
basically you'll run into it if you.
look. They're all over the place, and there's so many. And in fact, Andy, my co-host, and I were interviewing last weekend Bill Cardelopoulos.
Oh, nice.
That interview is going to be going up next week. And if you don't know Bill Cardelopoulos, he is the current general editor of the Best American Comics series from Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. And we had him on talking about this year's volume of Best American Comics. And we were specifically asking him about his foreword to this year's volume. And in that foreword, he makes the argument that, talking about the mainstream or a mainstream in terms of comics today is really problematic in that, we know what people mean by mainstream, primarily DC Marvel, right?
Right.
And primarily superhero. But when it comes to sales and when it comes to just, if you look at the broader population awareness, DC and Marvel, depending on how you look at it, may be in more of a minority than people think. Because if you're talking about sheer sales, then Raina Telgemeier has people beat hands down. And one of the things I pointed out that, at least from my experience, when I talk to my students, in the ATEC program about comics and ask them what they read, more times than not, webcomics.
Oh, really?
Yeah, most do not even go into a comic store. Many probably wouldn't even know where to go in terms of getting a comics at the store. So if they're aware of comics, it's going to be, I think, one of either three ways that they know comics. The TV and cinema worlds of DC and Marvel. So they'll know that, but they won't know those comics. They'll also know it through manga or anime, usually.
It's very different.
Right. But it's still comics, right? Because we call... manga is Japanese comics. It's comics.
Well, going from manga to DC and Marvel Universe is... it's,
But, what I'm saying is this is their awareness. But I think more times than not, in my experience in the classroom, at least at UTD, is that the students, they like comics, and I say, what do you read? And they list off webcomics.
Oh,
and
okay.
because the web, they're free, and there's so many out there, and there's so much for anyone's taste, and it doesn't take much to find something that you could like and want to read on a regular basis. And so, I would venture to guess that for many, especially a younger generation, that may be much more mainstream than the Marvel or DC universe.
It's also kind of nice, too, because even if there's a thing called Patreon these days, and so basically if you do want to support a webcomic, you can do I'll pay $1 a month or maybe $1 per every thing that comes out, and you can feel like you're contributing without breaking your wallet, sort of thing, which is also a nice way of doing things.
Yeah, giving back to the artist.
Oh yeah, and there's some webcomic creators who make a really nice penny on Patreon, and there's some who don't make much at all, who have campaigns. And I'm glad that you mentioned Patreon, because let me use this opportunity to say, do you like what you're listening to, dear listener? Because if you do, then hey, support us on Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/comicsalternative, you'll see that we, the Comics Alternative, have a Patreon campaign, and you can support us for any amount that you would like. Go for $1 a month. Why not? We have a lot of $1 supporters.
Of course.
So, again, go to patreon.com/comicsalternative, and there you go. There is my Patreon pitch for this On Location episode.
There's your plug, everybody.
That's right. So thank you, Stephanie, for that opportunity to do that. So, yeah, but that's a great way for creators to sustain themselves, at least somewhat. And even if they don't have much of a Patreon following, then what little they make can help defer cost of hosting wherever they have their webcomic. And so now we have another regular who is usually here. He's a little late today. Craig, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing okay. How are you doing?
Okay. We were just talking about webcomics, but in a larger sense, everyone was sharing their favorite comics of 2016.
Favorite comics of 2016.
Right, yeah, for the end of the year, because this is the last show we'll do on location.
That's
in
right.
2016.
That's right.
So we're going to look back and
see. Okay, so anyways, forgive me. I've been at work all day, so I'm a little bit slow today.
Oh, don't worry. I was the exact same way. A little sluggish.
Let's see. The favorite comic books I think I've read. They kind of go all over the place, but the all-new Wolverine has been a joy to read this year. With the new female Wolverine has been surprisingly a really fun read. I've been really enjoying the Rebirth series from DC, where I think we finally got their heroes back on track and stuff like that, and just off the wall stuff. The IDW stuff has been really, really good as well, from Godzilla to Transformers and all of that type of stuff. So there's been a lot of really good comics this year.
In fact, one of the reasons that it's good to hear what you guys say about your favorites of the year is that you're going to be more apt to bring in series, especially series that I'm not aware of, like, for instance, the all-new Wolverine. I don't consider myself much of a Marvel guy anyhow.
Right.
But this is something that I probably wouldn't know about.
No, probably. It's... Marvel made the decision to kill... the Wolverine, that's been their most popular hero since, the 80s, and wondering which direction they're going to go take with him, and they, his thoughts on, who is going to take up the mantle for Wolverine. You could have Wolverine's son, or you could have X-23 take it up, or there was even talk of Sabretooth doing it. And but fortunately, wise decision, they let X-23 do it. And surprisingly, though, it was really well done. She decided to go with more of the 80s style of Wolverine, where Wolverine didn't kill anybody, but he still had sharp claws. Doesn't mean someone's not going to go home without a finger or a foot maybe, but they're going to live at the end of the fight. And she's kind of taken up the same deal that back then Wolverine was trying to be the perfect samurai. He had a code and all this type of stuff, and she wants to be that person. So she thinks of Wolverine as a mentor, but yet she still thinks like a teenager and all that type of stuff. And her adventures have been really, really a lot of fun.
Sounds pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. I was really delightfully surprised. Usually when they kill off, Wolverine has been my hero since I started comics.
Yeah.
And usually when they kill heroes I really enjoy, I hate the person that takes over. But this is the first time in a long time that I've really enjoyed who's taken over, and has done really well. And I really like seeing the direction it keeps on going. Now they're doing her take on, if you ever read the Enemy of the State, she's now doing her version of Enemy of the State, which fortunately is not just a remake of the old Wolverine's Enemy of the State. It's back when she was part of the Weapon X program. She actually had a trigger scent, so that if she didn't want to kill somebody, they would just spray the scent on her, and she would instantly go berserk and kill that person. And she thought after she wiped out her version of the Weapon X project, that stuff was gone. Well, someone found it, weaponized it, and sprayed it all over this one town, and she killed everybody. And so now she has S.H.I.E.L.D. after her. One of the villains from her past, and a whole bunch of other really crazy stuff going on. So it's a lot of fun because it's a little something different.
Okay, so everyone has shared some of their favorite comics of 2016, and this is a direction that I didn't necessarily suggest that we go into, but since this is kind of a retrospective episode. You've talked about some of your favorites. What is a title, could be a series, could be a book, that kind of fell short of your expectation? So what is one thing that you thought would be good, you looked forward to it, and then you read it and you go, it's not for me, not what I thought it'd be?
Plutona. That ended a lot differently than I thought it was going to. I guess just because they canceled the ongoing, and it was just strictly 5 issues.
See, that's interesting because Jeff Lemire, one of your favorites for Black Hammer, and then also one of your misses.
I know, he's making up for it now.
Okay, Plutona. Because that was supposed to be an ongoing, right? But then it ended after, 5 issues?
Yes, I think.
Yeah. And that was an Image comic, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so that was a miss for you.
And then there was one other one with the animal humans and the regular humans that I was really enthusiastic about. I can't remember for the life of me what it was.
Animal humans and regular humans?
Is it the humans?
No, I don't think so. No, not
that's
Animosity.
new.
It's it was supposed to be it seemed like it was going to be a romance comic between like this human and this dog human hybrid that he grew up with. I can't remember the name for the life of me. But I know that I guess the reason why I didn't like how the 5 issues ended just because it was part of a main series. I guess it was a spin-off,
Oh.
So without all that other context, it's kind of lost on me, the significance of it all. So I can't.
I have one actually, and I did say that it was one of the good ones that I've read, but at the same time, the ending of it was it wasn't so great. But I don't know what happened. It was Rick Comendo's Tokyo Ghost. Everything leading up to the ending was great, but then I got to the ending and it fell short. It felt like it was very abruptly ended.
So that was one of your favorites, but then the ending is what fell short.
Yeah.
Mass Effect.
Wow.
Like everything, like I was like, wow. I was like, oh my god, okay. There's so much action, so much going on, and then I get to the last chapter of it, and it just kind of fell flat. It felt like it needed to. It needs another whole set of volumes to explain what just happened, but apparently that's it.
Well, that, and I'm just speculating here, but that may be a function of a series, and you get a lot of these now, especially from Image. Plutona being the case in point, where its intention is to be an ongoing, but then because sales aren't what they need to be in order to keep it going, the creators have to end it sooner rather than later, and so by truncating the story, the ending doesn't seem as satisfying.
Yeah, I kind of felt like that, that might have been the case, but I don't know, it's just unfortunate to see it too, because his other titles. I can't think of the name right now. It's Deadly Class.
Yeah.
I was going through that, and I believe it's still coming out.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that's really good.
Mm-hmm.
Never seen a story like that before. But I guess the guy's, busy with all of his other stories. He decided to do this one after a while. But
yeah, Remender's got a lot going on right now.
Oh yeah.
What did you think of that title? Did you see the title?
Yeah, it's Emma Rios's Mirrors. Or Mirror.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Part of that huge 8-house tapestry series.
Okay.
So I'm like...
we did read the first issue of Mirrors.
Yeah, and it was really, really good, but I guess without reading the rest of the series, that's just, it loses itself, so...
now that you mention this, I seem to recall that was one of my feelings when we reviewed that first issue, was that it was interesting, but I felt like I was missing something by not really knowing as much of the 8-house world, because I had read the first maybe one or two issues of 8-house, but then after that I kind of let it go. And this being a part of that, I just felt that there was something there that wasn't registering.
At the end of it, of each issue, it's like 2 pages worth of a little tiny backstory about what's going on, but I felt like it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
There was too much going on that I didn't realize. So, yeah. Greg, did you have anything that kind of fell?
Oh, actually, yeah. So my thing is, you're gonna get my someone who works in a comic shop opinion, and I had to look it up because I was unsure if it had actually, because I felt like that started in 2015, but it did end in 2016, so I'm counting it. Is the event I mentioned earlier, which was Secret Wars, Marvel's Secret Wars, and it started in 2015. It was supposed to be how many months,
Supposed to be just what was it? It was supposed to be like 6 or 8 issues.
Yeah, it's supposed to be 6 or 8 issues. They expanded it to 9 issues,
right? And
that was they announced the 9th issue when the 8th one came out. And then the problem with it is that they pretty much put everything on hold to do all these Elseworld stories. And some of them were good, like you got A-Force out of that, but the problem with a lot of them was that not every Elseworld corresponded to a book. So a lot of people, for months and months, had their comics put on hold, and we didn't know what books were continuing, and we didn't have what was coming out for the longest time, and so a lot of people dropped a lot of titles during that time. And as a comic, and then so we had a whole wall, or almost a whole wall and a half of just these comics that were very difficult to move because people either didn't know what was going on, were unsure if they had to read the whole event to get into all these other Elseworld books, and it was just a mess. That was a terrible event.
And didn't they release a whole bunch of new series before Secret Wars actually ended?
We were just talking about that. So we had Squirrel Girl, Spider-Gwen, what was the other one that we mentioned? Silk came out.
Yeah.
So it was that and a bunch of other stuff. They just started them. They do them we're starting them and it's huge, and they promoted them. And then it's 2 or 3 issues in, it's those are being canceled, and then we're going to redo it once this event is over. And then basically it was put on hold for months and months and months, which then people who might have started reading it might be, it got canceled.
That's
It's not what happened. It was a mess. I really hated that event.
It's like seeing the sequel to a movie without finishing the first one.
That's interesting because I remember at the time, I listened to a number of comics podcasts, and several of them were talking about this, but from a reader perspective, right? So, and being frustrated with Marvel because of these kind of shenanigans. And it's interesting to hear your take on it from a retailer's point of view, because you mentioned the titles, being stuck on the wall, not being able to move them as you could other previous titles from Marvel.
Yeah, and also I did check, but it was 2015, but DC also did something similar, which was Convergence, which I was kind of excited for because it had Stephanie Brown being Batgirl again, Cassandra Cain as what was her name, Black Bat, and then you had Ted Kord as Blue Beetle. So you had these really interesting ideas, but the problem is you'd get 1 issue or maybe 2 of a really kind of cool Elseworld story, and then it would be kind of interrupted by we must kung fu fight now, or we must do Mortal Kombat. And I was really disappointed because I read the Catwoman one. It was really interesting. So basically she was in Metropolis when the city got bubbled by Brainiac, and so Superman and every other hero is nowhere to be found. And so she becomes the hero that Metropolis needs, which was super great. And then basically Brainiac comes and is you must fight this other Batman, and she dies. And it's that's no point. It's okay, that happens. And it kind of wasted. And there was a lot of interesting ideas. Aquaman got trapped in a landlocked city, so he took over the aquarium. Then you had Gotham that was Stephanie Brown, and basically Batman's not there. It's basically all the Bat Kids are the only people protecting the kids. So you had Robin, and that was it. So basically the Robins were basically taking care of it, and that was really interesting. But once again, it's you get 1 issue of that, and then the rest is death. Yeah, so that was not fun. And so basically it's this whole thing, and they also put a lot of things on hold to do it, and you're trying out new things, but you're also basically giving people time to think through their comic book purchases and be I'm spending this much money that I'm not spending And so do I need to get that book? Or even if they really like that book, they may not resubscribe to a new series, because usually that's the end of it, and then they'll restart it, and it won't maybe continue on the same number, and it's a mess. So just don't do that. Because we had 2 comic book companies try it, does not work.
I was going to say, Stephanie didn't mention Secret Wars 2 was one of my biggest disappointments, just story-wise and everything else. And then my other big one was the one that just finished here, I think it was either last month, was Death of X. It's just bad, the way they ended it and everything else. It was supposed to explain what happened to Cyclops after the Terrigen Mists, the first Terrigen bomb all happened, and it was just disappointing. And what happened to the White Queen, and
you didn't like it with what happened to Cyclops and whatnot?
No, it was just terrible.
Okay.
They didn't need to have those issues at all. They could have just said, and this is what happened, and that would have been a good page or 2, and that would have been it.
Well, it's a good thing that's a prequel, because I've been hearing good things about the X-Men versus Inhumans.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, that one I'm hoping for a little bit better, even though...
Oh, Craig.
It's right on the shelf, right over there.
I keep hoping, though, that,
then...
since the Terrigen Mists, in case no one has heard it, the Terrigen Mists are now killing all the mutants.
But let me say, logically, I have very much issue with how it's killing off the mutants, because it's making them sterile, and that's not how new mutants are made. It doesn't happen when a mutant meets a mutant and they love each other very much. It's basically, it's basically anyone could have a child that is a mutant. So therefore, making them sterile shouldn't kill them off. It does suck, and then the Inhumans need to take responsibility, because you're forcibly steriling this whole group of people. But it does not mean you're dying.
I thought they got some sort of disease,
changed
though.
all that, though, because
they had to make it. I think people pointed out
that diseases and die from it as well.
Yeah.
I don't understand how the Inhumans and X-Men are, going to what the war is going to settle. I would have been like, well, the Earth is poisonous to us. Let's just leave, and we could have the X-Men in space again, just like it was back in the 1980s, and I would have been okay with that.
Since we've been ragging on events, are there any events that we've been enjoying?
Events that we've been enjoying. Well, I did mention, like I said, All New Wolverine just started her Enemy of the State, which is kind of an event, but it just deals with her. So that.
Well, it's not really an event.
Yeah,
if it's dealing with a character or a title.
Revolution is actually okay. So that's an event. So IDW is doing Revolution, which is supposed to bring their entire world together. So G.I. Joe meets Transformers, meets Micronauts, meets Action Man.
Meets Rom the Space Knight.
Yes, thank you. That was it. I was going to miss somebody here. And that has surprisingly been, as events go, that's been surprisingly pretty good. It wasn't really hard to make Transformers and G.I. Joe work together, because they've done it before in other comics. And Rom Space Knight was actually easy fix to come in, because G.I. Joe just looks at him like, hey, look, it's another giant robot. They must be working with the Transformers.
And of course, these things are all toys.
Yeah, they're all toys. Yeah. And surprisingly, IDW really thought ahead of this and actually made a cohesive story. And even probably the weakest part of it was trying to bring the Micronauts into the universe. That it still kind of worked. It wasn't like, oh my god, I hate this. It actually was, oh, this is actually kind of a cool idea. And how it worked with the Transformers. Mm-hmm. That there was another Prime that shrank himself into the microverse and may have created it.
He had little micro babies.
Yeah, pretty much, yes. And
has the Mask universe ever been introduced into that?
The Max universe has got into it.
I think it's getting a comic.
Yeah, it is. That's the only reason why I brought it up.
Next year or something, or maybe the end of this year.
I saw in the preview section, so I was asking if
they're in it, and they're right now acting like G.I. Joe's Special Forces group.
Ooh, fun.
To try and take out the Transformers. I don't think I'm going to spoil anything, but basically the idea is Rom has come to Earth. The Dire-Wraiths are taking over Earth by taking over people and looking like people. But Rom has a device to know which ones are alien and which ones are humans. And he realized that G.I. Joe was being infiltrated by the Dire-Wraiths. And so being a good, space robot, he goes immediately into the G.I. Joe, while they're outside the headquarters, he goes up there and he finds all the ones that were wraiths and kills them all. And then leaves. Doesn't explain what's going on. He just kills them all and just says, "Thanks, you're welcome," and leaves. And so, of course, you have Scarlet and Duke and all that. It's like, what the heck was that? Well, the only crazy robots we know are Transformers, so they must have sent him to go kill off all of us, so now we're going to go get them. And the Transformers like, wait, there's another robot?
Oh, Raw making trouble for everybody yet again.
Yeah, and so it just goes crazy from there. In the Micronauts universe, though, their universe is dying, and they're trying to figure out why. And so they send our heroes basically into what this event that's happening in their universe that's slowly but surely killing it off. And surprise, surprise, they actually live and find out what's been going on. And that helps bring them into the universe and stuff like that. So if you're looking for an event that's, it's kind of crazy, but it is kind of a lot of fun, and you don't mind reading about a whole bunch of old 80s toys, that's probably an event I really do like.
I would like to make an elevator pitch that Gem and the Hologram should cross over with Transformers. Just let that happen. That'd be really great.
Oh, they're going to cross over with Josie and the Pussycats at some point.
Oh,
you know it's
nice.
going to happen.
I hope so, because there's also been good crossovers, too, with Gotham Academy and...
Well, those are small, small standalone. But the Revolution one is still ongoing. So if anybody wants to check it out, get ready for that.
It's that's an event I think they really took their time and thought it out. It wasn't like sometimes I always feel like Marvel and DC like, hey, let's have an event to have an event, and this is what we'll do, and we'll just figure it out from there. And they actually seemed like they took the time and see like, how are we going to figure these things out, and get them into our universe, and like, okay, this one's a little crazy, but I think we can make it work. And like Action Man gets in there because he's kind of like a one-man G.I. Joe team anyways, so it's not real hard to see him in that universe. It just seemed like a little bit more planned and took it over like back in the days when Marvel and DC, when they had, back then it was just summer-long events. Everybody was out of school and they had money and they would go out and buy, these events so they can get all of the superheroes in one case, but it was only that one time during the year. It wasn't like every quarter.
Yeah.
And so but this one sounds like they actually spent the time like they used to do, and it's a lot of fun, and it's interesting, and there's some cool books coming out from it when the IDW verse comes out, where the G.I. Joe and Transformers are going to work for real after they finally set aside their differences and all the other stuff that's going to go on. So there's some cool stuff coming out of it that looks like the universe is going to... The event is going to change the universe, and everybody else has to...
Which has been a problem with all these other event comics we've mentioned, is that they don't really do anything. It just happens. And there's no, like, emotional fallout. There's no, like, catharsis from the event, to use a big word. It's just... It's there, and no one mentions it again.
Yeah. Well, that's the bad thing about Secret Wars, is that everybody's memories gets erased at the end of it, and they just kind of don't question, oh, my mom's still alive. Oh, this person's now here that was previously dead.
Yeah. Or
and then they also skip
Miles
9
Morales,
months.
how'd you get into our universe that you weren't there before?
They also skip like 9 months to avoid any emotional fallout too. They're just like, all right, we're 9 months in.
So yeah, if anybody hasn't read Secret Wars, spoiler alert. Sorry.
I was thinking, in fact, it was just this morning about this, that and DC does it as well, but I think that Marvel is a much bigger culprit in terms of coming up with these various schemes or shenanigans that really don't make sense whatsoever. Yet... On some of the podcasts that I listen to, the comics podcast, the fans of Marvel will nonetheless, to some degree, make excuses for what Marvel's doing. And what that reminds me of, to get political for a moment, is the way that the Republican Party has dealt with Donald Trump. Go out of their way to try to make sense of him and what he does, and to make the argument, well, yeah, he is one of us. It's like if you throw away all logic and reason and everything that came before, I guess he is representative of what you do. So it's like trying to make sense of what Marvel does, no matter how wacky, no matter how illogical and infuriating, you can't push it aside. You have to say, well, I'm a Marvel fanatic. and therefore it has to make sense.
So the
Being
thing
a
is
good
that
Marvel zombie, I know where you're coming
Yeah.
from. It's I buy into it and then I hate myself later. And
we've been working on that without
but
success.
I don't until I don't know. There's just maybe it'll take a change in leadership in Marvel. Before maybe that will come in together, and God knows when that will happen. But I think that right now the events are the sequences because every year at San Diego Comic-Con when people talk about it, they're like, yeah, I understand that you may not like that one, but everyone keeps buying all these event stuff. They don't buy Captain America just as Captain America. They don't buy it. It's always these event comics. And
It's the event comics. It's the #1, the constant relaunching or
and all that
renumbering.
stuff. And it's like, well, how do I argue against that? It's like,
Have you, Craig? Have you been keeping up with the clone conspiracy?
I'm well behind on the clone conspiracy.
Okay, well, it's getting
Is
kind
that-
of interesting to say the
is it?
least. So yeah,
Wow.
I mean,
That one's a hard one for me to get back into because I
Yeah.
remember the clone conspiracy in the 90s. and
oh,
I
this one's even
hated
better.
it.
It's bring back some interesting characters that'll really make a difference. So
You're talking about from the 90s, Clone Conspiracy or Clone Saga?
Well, yeah, well, it was called the Clone Saga.
Oh, God.
and then maximum clonage, and then
Okay,
yeah.
see,
And it went on forever.
well, see, the original Clone Saga from when, the 70s, I think it was?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, that was fine. Then the 90s Clone Saga started off okay, but then 90% of it, and it went on for what, 20 years it seems like?
Oh wow.
It felt like it wasn't
No, it
20
didn't,
years.
but it felt like it. And it just became ridiculous. And I was talking, I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago with Danny Fingeroth, who was the Spider-Man editor at that time.
Right.
And I don't know if he was defending what they were doing, but what he was saying is the reason that it lasted so long was because it was selling, and people kept buying the Clone Saga comics, even though it was becoming ridiculous beyond belief. And so anything with clone in the title that Marvel publishes, I don't want to have anything to do with.
Yeah.
Just
Well, luckily,
because
this is just.
I'll start going through convulsions.
Yeah, this one's just centered around the Amazing Spider-Man, or at least the new one. And I think the clone conspiracy, the comic is just going to be like a 5-issue standalone, and then what happens, I guess, in the aftermath, Spider-Man will have to deal with in his own series. Like, nobody else is being,
affected by it.
yeah, exactly.
Right. But why do you, okay, my point is, why do you have to recycle old events? Why not have
it's not-
Spider-Man do something different? Instead of having something dealing with clones, maybe an event where he opens a shoe store and it's the drama of selling footwear.
Yeah, because people would buy that.
People are buying this retread stuff.
Well, it's not
like-
certain event. It's bringing back certain people that were significant to Spider-Man that were either, I guess you could say just when they were killed off. So.
Right, but that race has been run multiple times.
Yeah.
So why don't you do new things? Where's the imagination? Where is
It takes
the
a lot
innovation?
to make new characters. I have no idea.
See, my thing.
Oh, and
is-
corporations with as much money as Disney and Marvel don't have the wherewithal to do this and
No.
come up with new stories?
No, my thing is that people need to, with anything, but especially with comics and games or anything that it is media that you consume, you can still like it and still criticize it. Like,
Right.
that doesn't mean that you're a bad fan. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person. And also
bad
remember,
boy.
corporations are not your friend either. So, you don't have to be loyal to Marvel or DC or anything and take anything that they give you. You can criticize it. You can not buy things that you don't like. Stuff like that. That's my advice.
I was going to say, with the clone conspiracy, I just saw a bit of a snippet of that, and this is just the first issue, but apparently, Gwen Stacy, not a clone.
Wait, no.
Wait, because I've only seen the first issue. And
Okay,
it's
well-
just saying, yeah, this is the
It's
actual
only been
Gwen
out a
Stacy.
couple of weeks. I guess you can. I don't know. Can you put like spoiler tags in there or something like that?
Well, by the time someone's listening to this, they. Okay, guys, we had a spoiler, so sorry.
Spoilers. Go ahead. Yeah.
It's
that happens.
Apparently saying no, this isn't a clone. This is the actual Gwen Stacy, and then they go into it's like this is just a bit of old DNA or something like this or something without saying it's cloning. It's very strange, and that's all I know about the clone conspiracy.
Yeah. So the original Gwen Stacy comes back. The Jackal clones her. So I think that happens in the first issue. So I don't know if you could consider that super spoilers for what's been going on. So has she come back?
Yes.
Oh, she's been
that was the gist of these earlier clone sagas. Is the Jackal clones her, and then he clones everything else.
Whatever happened to the clone Stacy? Did she dissolve or something like that?
I don't know.
It depends on which clone thing you're going with, but no, that was the deal. Is that Jackal comes back and he was always in love with Gwen Stacy and was really upset that when she died, and so the first thing he did was clone her, and then decided for some reason he cloned Peter Parker, and hence that's why we got the Scarlet Spider.
Right.
And that was the original clone saga was supposed to introduce a new character,
right?
The Scarlet Spider, who is going to take over being Spider-Man. Yeah. And Peter Parker was going to make a decision like, okay, I'm tired of that. I'm going to retire as Spider-Man and be with Mary Jane and maybe have children. And then that was going to be it. But as you said, it didn't stop. And that's why it got getting crazy, because they didn't know what direction they were going to go in, because you still had Peter Parker Spider-Man, you had Ben Reilly Spider-Man, and then God knows how many other Spider-Men.
Yeah, there's a lot of Spider-Men that came out of
Spider Island.
That was back in the 90s. But yeah, you had another guy. What was his name? I can't think of his name, but he had another guy that was the anti-Spider-Man that was trying to kill all the clones, and it just
I can't remember the character's name.
I can't think of his name, but and then the Jackal was.
You're talking about like Mordoon or something like that?
No, not him, but there was a guy before him.
Oh, okay. Not the vampire spider.
No, it was just another guy that he's now the Scarlet Spider, and for some reason he's a good guy, but I never kind of figured that one out.
Okay.
Well, maybe veering from the headache of the
Don't
clone.
read the clone saga from the 90s. That's all I'm saying.
Let's end on a more positive or up note. And one of the things I'd like to do for our own location show in January. Okay, it's a new year, and if this month we're talking about the comics that we liked for the previous 12 months, basically we're looking back. For January, let's look forward. And one of the things I'd like for you guys to do is to consider comics. It could be individual, like new series or new storylines in existing series or original graphic novels or collections. Just anything, or even films, right? Adaptations. Things that you look forward to in terms of comic culture over the coming months. Okay? So what do we have to look forward to in 2017 that you're really excited about, you're looking forward to, that you have high hopes for?
Highlander.
Okay, you give it away. But let's save this for January. So for January, we're going to be looking forward to the things that we're looking forward to in comics. How's that?
It sounds great. I've already got a few ideas.
Hopefully I'll be able to come up with a list.
And I want to thank all of you guys for joining us. We have Josh joining us for the first time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then Stephanie, who, you weren't on duty tonight, but you came by to talk to us.
Yeah.
And you're definitely our shop representative. And then, of course, Craig and Matt. Appreciate you guys coming in and talking. And if you want to let us know your thoughts of what you consider some of the best of 2016, and if you agree with these guys in terms of their choices, or even disagree with them, then definitely get in touch with us and let us know what you thought about this month's On Location episode. If you go to the website comicsalternative.com, you'll find that you can leave us a voice message via SpeakPipe, which is really easy to use. Or you can call us the old-fashioned way by dialing 4153-COMICS. That's 415-326-6427. You can also email the show. We're 2guys@comicsalternative.com, or you can email me directly. I'm Derek at comicsalternative.com. And we're all over social media, such as Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, Instagram, Google+, Goodreads, Pinterest, and YouTube. You can subscribe to the podcast through iTunes. You can stream us on Stitcher. You can find us on TuneIn, on Spotify, on iHeartRadio, and on Google Play Music. But you can find every single one of our podcast episodes, as well as the reviews and comics-related commentary that we post on our blog, simply by going to our website, which is, again, comicsalternative.com. So, guys, thanks for joining us again, and I hope that you have a wonderful holiday and a happy new year.
Oh, you too. Thanks for having us.
Yes. Happy holidays.
And I'll see you on the other side.
Yes,
Of course.